All
And
right.
we're rolling.
This is episode 11.
I think so. Who knows?
Yeah, no, it is 11, 100%.
Yeah, 100%? 100% 11. Here we
Yeah.
go.
This is the only time
All
I've
right.
ever been sure of anything. So, but you
Well, hey,
better
on
believe
episode 11, we have Caleb with us. Welcome, Caleb. It's fun to have
it.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thanks for letting me get in on you guys' podcast.
Yeah, dude.
We're just trying to expand it and just kind of meet new people. And like, obviously, this is my first time meeting you, so it's a pleasure. And
Likewise.
you want to tell us a little bit something about yourself, or is that too personal?
That's a very personal question. I don't feel comfortable answering that.
I'll back out. Turn off the podcast quick.
My name is Caleb David. I am from Liberia, West Africa.
Awesome.
Been between the States and Liberia for my entire life. Currently live in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Work
Okay.
as a realtor, and I also work at Heat Praxia, which is a sauna on Sherman. Sauna
Nice.
cold plunge therapy studio. Yeah,
I might have to check that out. You're selling
Yeah.
me.
you should, man. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, dude.
Interesting.
We all
How
need
do you get into
houses and cold therapy.
Yeah, how do you get in the sauna game? I'm curious.
I left a previous job, and the manager at the sauna, I had worked with her before for a year at Coeur d'Alene Coffee Company. And so, yeah, she offered me the gig, and I was like, heck yeah.
That's cool, man. Connections.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
It's who you know, man.
Yeah.
It's who you know.
Big time. So I think last week we went with Brandon on what was inspiring him.
Did I start
flip it.
first?
I think so. Yeah, we made a
Yeah?
big deal about it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so now we're going to take that all back, and I'll start it out this time.
Go for it, man.
And
What inspires
so-
you, Paul?
okay. It's lame because I don't really like the topic that much, but I feel like I need to talk about it because it's been important to me.
Okay.
So what inspires
What an
me?
intro.
What inspires me is nature, and it's it's whatever. But like, I'm not much of a nature guy myself. I would rather be indoors most of the time. But this last week, I was just kind of my first year trying to get into hunting, and so to hunt, you kind of have to spend time outside unless you're hunting people, and so no.
What other hunting do people do? Gosh.
I don't know. You're right. So anyway, by all that, I've just had to spend some time outside, and I have to is a strong word, but I'm up here in Priest River, and it's just beautiful forest all around as far as the eye can see, pretty much behind my house. And so for the past couple of days, I've just been, it's been a snowstorm, which is awesome. I enjoy that. But I've just been kind of like roaming through the woods and through the hills and looking for deer. Didn't get anything, but just through the process of doing that, I've just kind of, I'm not going to say like fallen in love with nature because that's a little cliche, but like it does something else to your mind and something else to your, psyche that like people, always claim like, oh, nature's good for you. Get outside, go spend some time in the grass, all that kind of stuff, and like, I totally get that, it's like cool for people and stuff, but to actually experience it is a little different. So for me, it was just like, I would go out and spend 3 hours in the snow in the morning, and it just like the time started to fly by, and I had like a different sense of time and a different, like, I guess it's almost like an altered state or something outside of just the normal day to day, or even like a hike. I feel like, 'cause even when you take a hike, it's, it started and it's over before you realize it half the time, and you're back to your phone, you're back to whatever. But just being like forced outside of all that for extended periods of time, it was like a pretty interesting experience for me. So I don't know. Do you guys find that, have you guys first off spent like extended time outside of like in the wilderness or in nature without any sort of like technology or anything?
I mean, camping for sure.
Mhm.
You go out camping, or if you just do long hikes, or, the time that you and I went backpacking in wherever that was, Sequoia National Forest or something, you just get out there for a long time. Yeah, it's a healthy thing to do for sure. It definitely feels good deep down inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just recently spent, I think, 8 hours, daylight hours out out by Fernand Lake. I was just really stressed out and decided to get out there, and yeah, it completely gave me time to be present. I think that's one thing that nature does for me. It just brings me into the moment, which is good in every aspect of life. And also it reminded me that, like, this is going to sound super cliche, but like, it's all
That's
connected.
fine.
It's like, it's like nature is a part of me, just like I'm a part of nature. I'd been spending so much time like in my room, those four walls, that I forgot that there was so much like life out there. And being around life gives you life, and you know, you give life to life, and yeah, nature's phenomenal, man. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, Paul, I was gonna change the subject, but if you wanted to keep asking Caleb a question.
No, I'm good. Go for it.
Okay, I was gonna say, back at the beginning, you made it sound like this was something you didn't want to talk about. Why did you not want to talk about nature?
I feel like it's just kind of, again, it's like the cliche thing where it's like everybody knows it's good for you. Everybody knows, you know, that you're supposed to spend time in nature and decompress and step away from technology and all this stuff. So it's like, you know, it feels like preaching to the choir a little bit when you're saying that like, oh man, it is profound. But, yeah, so that's the main reason for that. Like, I don't know. And for me, like, it's almost more of like an exercise, like exercising rather than, you know, I'm not like looking forward to going out and spending 3 hours in the snow, you know, but once I do it, I like feel good about myself and I feel good for it. So it's kind of like, it's almost like a discipline rather than something that I'm interested in, because most of my interests are, I would just sit on the computer all day, you know, and that's where all my interests are. But, yeah, the other interesting thing was kind of taking the social element out of it. Cause I feel like a lot of times if you were going to be in nature, like you brought up camping, you know, you're actually spending time with other people. So it's almost, you know, not that that's a bad thing or anything, but it is a different element, just being solo and, you know, I guess trapped in your mind, for lack of a better word. or whatever. So
that's funny you say that. I have a point to make on that.
Please.
I had the opposite experience when I was out there. Like, for the first time, I felt like I wasn't trapped in my mind, in the way that I didn't feel like, since I was completely alone and I was just with myself, I didn't feel like there was any like judgment around me. I didn't feel like there were any people watching me and expecting me to behave in a certain way or look a certain way or act a certain way. And granted, I feel like most of the time, like, that's just me in my head thinking about everybody else. But like, those 8 hours, I felt more free than I had ever felt like before.
Interesting.
I laughed as loud as I've ever laughed. I cried. I screamed. I ran through the woods like a madman.
That's awesome.
It was just completely unfiltered. And yeah, so I think I 100% like what you said about just being out there by yourself. I don't know. It's easy to get caught up in like the social interactions and, oh, I got to present myself this way or I got to be that way.
How's that person viewing me?
Exactly. And when you're out there by yourself, when you're alone, like, you're not worried about what other people are thinking about you. You can be with yourself. You know, there were a lot of things that came up in those 8 hours that I didn't know I still I was still holding on to. And I was just able to like let it out, whether it was anger or whether it was sadness or whether it was fear. It all just came out. And
in kind of a judgment-free zone.
Yeah, it was like therapy, man. It was like therapy.
Are you generally like a more social person, or are you like more introverted, I guess?
I think historically, definitely more social. But I'm starting to enjoy being alone. I'm really starting to enjoy my time alone. And I think the biggest change has been the way that I talk about myself to myself, and the thoughts that I have about myself. In the past, they used to be very like negative and very critical, very judgmental. Now they're more they're more filled with grace and understanding and patience. And so now I can tolerate myself more.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Mm-hmm. What about you? Are you more extroverted or introverted?
Yeah, I think like, I don't know, this time of life, I'm guessing you're probably mid 20s to 30s, but like it's a super interesting time of life, I think, for people. And for myself, what I've been noticing is just, you can kind of start to get away from some of the patterns that have been formed when you're younger that you just kind of do subconsciously, and like understand things about yourself and kind of dig into more of the nuance instead of just, you know, finding a label for yourself of like, I'm this thing or I'm that thing. But I guess for me, like, I always thought I was more introverted. I think for what I've started to realize is that I really enjoy the social aspect when it's in things that I have in common with people. And that gives me actually like more energy and more, you know, drive to go do things, which is, I wouldn't have necessarily guessed about myself, and I would have tried to do things more solo in the past, but now I'm trying to collaborate more and trying to, you know, have groups of people that share interests to like, you know, almost build that energy and build like momentum in certain ways. And so this podcast is part of me kind of like reaching out in that and being, you know, rather than just trying to do something solo, like start a YouTube channel or whatever. It's like, well, why not just bring somebody in and, you know, you can keep each other accountable. You can kind of, you know, pick up some of each other's weaknesses and bounce ideas off of each other. I love bouncing ideas. So I think now I'm kind of embracing that side more and now moving into that. So, but yeah. Hey Brandon, what's the longest you've spent alone in the woods or the wild? Or I guess by yourself.
I don't know if I've ever been like in nature for extended periods of time alone in solitude. Not that I can think of. I feel like I've always been in nature with groups. I don't know. I mean, camping, backpacking, going on hikes. I mean, probably just day hikes, you know, 2 or 3 hours running around a mountain just by myself. I think that's the longest I've really done in nature, like solo, you know? Yeah. But yeah,
it's kind of one of those things you take for granted, you know, that it's there, but like, it's kind of intimidating to just put yourself out there for like a day or whatever, you know, just, I don't know, even go camping by yourself. It's like, well, what's the point, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Which is, I think, kind of, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you guys, I mean, what's like your definition of nature? Like, could nature be just going out into the backyard? Could nature be like, I have to be totally alone in the forest, like 10 miles out of town or something like that? I mean, what would you guys consider to be that, like, you know, this is good for my brain and my soul and my health level of nature that you immerse yourself in?
Paul, you want to answer first?
Yeah. For me, it's just like basically any time I'm outside in the elements. So I have like
you live in a forest, so
I do. In a yurt, which the walls are barely walls. So, yeah, we can hear all the animal sounds, you know, right outside the door and under the yurt, and you know, people are shooting their guns at all hours of the day and night. Which isn't really nature, but I got a hammock up the hill, and I just walk like 2 minutes from my house and then go sit in the hammock, and that's my nature quota. So like, even just going out onto my wife's grandpa's property to hunt felt like a adventure of sorts, you know, or like a real extreme thing, even though it's just walking for 10 minutes. So yeah.
Extreme.
Yeah, very extreme.
Extreme survival, 10 minutes away from home.
I even have 2 bars of service on my phone if I need it. Yeah.
That's
so it definitely wasn't, I mean, it's like 160 acres, so you can get kind of lost in there, but yeah, it was super cool. I mean, it was snowing, and it was, yeah, I felt like a real wild man, even though it's just pretty tame.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Caleb, what about you?
I think nature, going out to Tubbs would be nature for me. Tubbs Hill and just hiking out there. Yeah, I think nature is kind of out there where man hasn't quite infringed upon like just the naturalness of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Like
I
little
think that's
pockets of nature everywhere.
Yeah, little pockets of nature. Yeah, I don't know. I think the wildness of it, and when life is just uninterrupted and just flowing, you know, with there's brush, there's trees, there's rocks, there's whatever. I think that's nature. So like I can go sit out in my backyard and meditate, and that's still good. But then you always have the cars passing by. You have you know, people yelling and screaming and kids playing, which is, I sound like an old man. Like I'm not complaining about it, but
Darn kids yelling again.
Too much going on in this city.
It just slightly takes away from just being out there and being alone, and having the peace and just listening to the music. So I would say that's nature. There are amazing spots out on Tubbs that it's just really quiet. It's just really peaceful. You can hear the water. You can hear the wind through the trees. Yeah, I think it all combines to nature.
For sure.
You know, you made me think of something, Caleb. There is kind of a difference between the wilderness versus more organized nature. Like a park where they've got flower beds and trees they planted and little walkways and benches. Like that's nature, but it's like man-made, cultivated nature, you know, somebody's garden kind of thing. Yeah. Versus like camping or backpacking or hunting. That's like you're going out in the wilderness, you know? Do you guys feel like you have any noticeable differences between, I mean, you were talking about it, you know, it's like kids screaming or different things, but you know, there's kind of a difference between the wilderness of solitude and the cultivated nature. It's interesting.
Yeah, I actually have a thought about that. I honestly prefer like kept nature, if that makes sense. Because I've always had this thought that basically the garden becomes the whole world, you know, of Eden, basically. And so like there's this way where people are meant to like care for the earth and tend for the earth. And you kind of see that with like really like, I don't know, just the forest around here, for instance. Basically the underbrush just like overgrows, trees are falling everywhere. It's kind of like a mess. There's like, you know, it's nature, it's functioning, but like you see like a lot of mutations in the trees where they have to like grow around, you know, they'll grow off like a second shoot off the tree. And there's like these weird mutant trees that are like growing around everything's fighting for the light. You know, it's like this weird, like survival of the fittest, like swamp graveyard. And, you know, and so, but then you see like a well taken care of forest and everything's got like equal spacing, or not equal, but enough spacing to get to the light. You know, there's enough, you know, like things are spaced properly. So that way, like all the different species of like plants can thrive, and there's more species of plants because everything is, you know, given its space and its room to grow. And there's like more animals because there's more species of plants and stuff. And it's just like, it's a different kind of like abundance, I guess, than just hands off, like let it go, you know? And so for me, like that, I've always kind of seen like maybe there's a way to do like to inhabit the whole earth, but also take care of it and create like enough spaces where people can still find quiet, because I think that's what people really want a lot of times out of nature is the quiet, but also like maintain it, but offer, you know, tranquility and sereneness. So, yeah.
Okay, wait, but you kind of, I mean, that's an interesting point to make. So you're saying that you enjoy kind of the ordered nature, right? And it maybe not like perfectly cultivated garden or whatever, but at least like a forest where it's well spaced and kind of man has come through and done a few things. But then do you feel like the chaotic, jungly forest, all overgrown, do you feel like that didn't exist in the Garden of Eden? Like that's because of the fall of man, and that's like, you know, corruption on nature in some way? Or do you just, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say it's like not the ideal state.
Okay.
Like I think it is a state, but like part of human like coexistence of the earth is, and like proper coexistence, in my personal opinion, is to like manage that and to like, you know, try to guide things towards more abundant and fulfilling, fruitful ways.
Yeah.
So
like in the Garden of Eden, the trees would have cleaned up their bedroom. It would have been,
yeah, I don't know.
you know,
yeah, maybe.
That's interesting to think about.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, are there any benefits to like a messy, chaotic forest? Like maybe there's more fungus growing, or
Yeah.
I don't know. Like there's like, I'm sure that certain species of plants would have dominance, but maybe not equal survivability of all the different plants, you know?
Yeah, it tends to be like, I don't know, and I'm not a botanist or anything, but it tends to be like, yeah, like you said, a few species really do well. And it's like something that like shade and mold or like rotting wood
Right.
does really, really well.
Right.
And then, you know, it might just be a whole different subset of like, you know, species that moves in, but to the just casual observer, it seems like there's less animal species, less, you know, all those kinds of things where you could actually introduce maybe even more plants or something, or different types of species that aren't even necessarily even native. I know that gets into a whole messy thing, but like find things that are symbiotic to each other and like try to build things up that way. But
yeah.
nature's kind of weird if you mess with it too much. Come back to bite you. So, but yeah, I think that's my topic there.
Any, Caleb, do you have any last thoughts on nature before we move on?
Oh man,
You feel good about the nature?
I feel good about nature. We can move on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm excited to go into the thing that inspires me. I didn't know that Paul was going to pick nature, but I feel like mine has an interesting connection. It's going to be eating plants. No, it's not. It's actually fire. I've been thinking about this actually for like a couple weeks now, how amazing fire is. And yeah, I mean, you think about, well, first of all, just looking at fire is like beautiful, you know, whether it's destructive or it's organized, it's in the fireplace, whatever it is. But it's like, man, this thing is just, it's light, you know, you can see things with fire. It's like a beautiful color. It's always changing. It's never like a static form. It's always like flickering and moving around, you know, it's beautiful. But fire gives you so much, you know, it gives you energy and heat and light. You can like get rid of waste materials by burning it with fire, which people do a lot up here in Idaho, you know. Humanity has been able to survive a lot of things because fire, you know, keeps you warm in the winter. You can cook with it, all kinds of amazing things that you do with that, you know. And I don't know, there's different ideas on the origin of fire, like it came
Prometheus.
You know, yeah, Prometheus, or we saw lightning strike, or, you know, the cult of the, what is it? Civilizing heroes taught it to people. I don't know what it is, you know? I mean, I would say when Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, there was the cherubim who had the flaming sword, and it was like, that guy's got a flaming sword. How did he make that happen? You know, I should have
Can
fire.
I get that on the way out?
There was hey, can I have some of that fire? But you know, even sorry to trample on your nature thing here. I mean, I'm still talking about nature, just like a specific part of nature. Okay, but
I was going to bring up forest fires for clearing out undergrowth.
Forest fires, I know, it's like it clears out undergrowth, kind of resets the forest. You know, a little recycling of things.
Some trees need it to like
some trees
seed pods to open.
Yeah, you know, they need it for that. And it's like there can even be life within fire, you know, which is pretty amazing. So I think the question I was going to ask you guys was kind of a funny question, but when do you feel like was the first time in your life you made a fire, like in a fireplace or camping or whatever, all by yourself? And how did that feel when you were like, ooh, I just made fire?
Weird. I need you to ask me some psychological questions.
When you made that fire, what did that have to do with your mother relationship?
Yeah, kind of implying more I'm like I'm gonna need some hypnosis or something to put me back to like my younger years, so I can relive that memory. Follow the watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't even think.
I remember mine, so I can go ahead and answer.
Yeah.
Do it, man.
I was a big fan of fire when I was younger. I used to get in trouble a lot because I used to go into the bathroom and light the toilet paper on fire. Keep throwing it in the sink.
Oh.
And I would just sit there watching it, just throwing more toilet paper in there. Lock the bathroom door, and I would just be in there burning toilet paper. My dad had to kick the door down once because I didn't want to open it until I got rid of all the ashes. So it had a pretty big impact on my mother relationship growing up.
Oh, that is
That's
so funny. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about that for a while, but I think you're right. There's just the beauty to it. Just consumes like whatever you put in it. It just completely consumes it, and that can be in a negative way, or you can choose to look at it in a positive way. But it completely engulfs, and it becomes a part of the fire. Like it uses it for fuel. It's not just wasted. You know, but it's used for.
It's almost like
a more energy
transmutation or something, where it like turns it into its base elements and all that. Yeah.
So yeah,
that's a great story, man.
That's super funny.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good
Yeah.
question.
Paul, do you think you can remember early fire making in Paul's caveman days?
It's got to have been with my dad because he's just kind of like likes doing all that kind of stuff. But I remember a significant fire story where I got like when I was like 12 or something, when we were playing Ultimate Frisbee during those years. I got like a little jet lighter, and it was like, I don't know why I got it, why I wanted it, but I just ordered it online. And so I was just like carrying it around. And then at Frisbee, I was just using it on like, I don't know, like a little leaf or whatever, blade of grass. I used it on the Frisbee a little bit. And like after that, we got like this, or our family got this huge email from one of the other homeschool families.
Oh, I remember this actually. Yeah. I remember that.
And like just like blasting everything and like, how could you be so unsafe and all this kind of stuff. And it just ended up turning like this homeschooled like fiasco. And I was like, I don't know. Like I wasn't being like irresponsible. I didn't think. And I still maintain that to this day, but, I don't know. I was just very comfortable around fire and what it would do. And apparently this family was not, or maybe didn't know the context. So that was my most significant fire memory I had growing up for sure.
Yeah, dude.
So to this day, my parents still won't let me let it down and like stop talking to that family. And it was like,
oh
wild.
Man, dude.
But
that's literally burning the bridge.
Pretty much. Yeah. So I was just messing around as a kid. I was just having fun, but
yeah,
no such luck. Yeah.
All right. Another question for you guys with fire. What do you feel like in a symbolic sense fire represents? Like when you think of like the symbol of fire, you know, whether that's in like culture, movies, in a biblical sense, historical sense, what does fire represent?
It's hard because it's so already defined in so many ways.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think of my own personal interpretation.
When you say already defined, what do you mean by that?
Just like passion or cleansing or, you know, there's like anger or, you know, those kind of things. Yeah, if I had to think of my own.
Have you guys watched the Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Knew that was coming.
Where, you know, because there's like the Fire Nation, right?
Yeah.
And the Fire Nation is all like angry and we want power and we're going to take over the world. And I feel like there's a weird stigma with fire where it's like angry, powerful people, you know? But I don't know. I don't feel like that always has to represent fire. I feel like fire can mean a lot of different things, you know?
Didn't Aang learn that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Uncle Iroh was a very gentle giant too with his firebending.
That's right.
Yeah.
He understood the power, and he was able to, use it.
Use it wisely instead of in haste.
Because, like you said, like you talked about, like there is life in fire.
Mm-hmm.
The way things have to die to give room or to create new life, there is a lot of life in fire, and it's a part of life, just like everything else. Like, it has its usage. I think people label it or have a connotation around it of it's angry, it's wild, it's uncontrollable, but fire is just fire. We're the ones that ascribe meaning to, what it is. Fire isn't out to kill anybody. Fire isn't out to hurt anybody. Fire isn't out to destroy anything. Fire is just being fire.
Force of nature.
If you don't know, it's just a force of nature, and it creates life, and it can destroy life, and it's just doing what it was created to do. And so, I don't know. When I think about it, I think of life. I think, and like Paul said, it's already been defined in so many different areas. But I think life. I think it's a primary component of life. Fire is what drives you. Fire is what moves you. Fire is what allows you to see, like you said. Fire is what allows you to cook and sustain and feed. And fire is keeps you warm. I think fire is life, is sustenance.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I would kind of say, it's, for me, it's like an energy or a transmutation. I think that's like my biggest, like when I think of that, because it always what always stood out to me. I took a chemistry class when I was younger, and seeing, a reaction that involves, basically like heating something up or burning something. It's like, you got your carbon wood or whatever. And then when it's burned, it's released into oxygen and carbon or whatever, in the air and smoke. And so it's like all that material didn't actually go anywhere. It just like the using the catalyst of energy, it changed form basically. And so now it's just somewhere else in a new form. And so it's like almost this catalyst for rebirth or transformation, using energy, which is like pretty fascinating and cool, which kind of always makes me think of like burnt sacrifices and stuff, when you would, burn these offerings, and all this, at this point, it's basically just matter is rising into the sky, to God. So it's like you're almost taking something from the physical, burning it and putting it into the spiritual, which is like the sky. And so it was kind of like this way to turn something physical into like raise it up into the spiritual level to be accepted by God. And so like fire played a role in that, obviously.
That was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That was awesome.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah, I was going to say the thought that I've had with fire that I don't feel like I've seen this symbolized in anything that I can think of, at least on the top of my head right now, is the idea of time. Because, if you think about like a rock is
that's some 300 IQ stuff right there, man. I don't get that connection.
If you think about like a rock, it's pretty much static. It stays the same on its own unless something changes it. But a fire never stays the same. It's always changing. And it kind of it can't self-sustain on its own, right? Like if you have a log and you put the log on fire, eventually you're going to burn up the whole log and the fire will be done. It's like it's almost like the sands of time that are moving. Like eventually the fire will consume and then it'll be done. And the fire itself, like you were kind of talking about, it's always flickering and moving and changing, and it's going to create a change in some way. And so I've been thinking about how fire
lifespan or something.
It has a finite lifespan, And I've been thinking about how fire is almost this representation of time, which is interesting. There's some passage where something changes and the fire has to come to an end, right? And how fire is interesting in that it has to have a beginning, right? Like fire didn't just always exist. There has to be like a lightning striking it. It doesn't just exist on its own, right? It has to have something that causes it to come into existence. Like on its own,
strange,
fire. Yeah. Like other than like the fire of the sun, which I would say is, relatively static there. Fire
Still
on planet
finite,
Earth.
but yeah.
Yeah, it is finite. Like eventually it burns out. It has only so much gas that it can explode and burn and whatnot. But with fire on planet Earth, if you don't have a human that's making it, if it doesn't come about naturally in some lightning strike, or I don't know, if dragons breathing fire, whatever it is, something's gotta make it exist, then it's never going to exist, right? And that's a weird thing to think that like if something didn't cause fire to come about, it would never exist. Like it would almost be this like extra color in the spectrum that like you'd never see unless there was a weird phenomenon, And I think about that representation of time, and I think about almost the parallel of that when it comes to the finite life of humans. And then when you think about fire in the Bible, where you have, the Spirit of God that's like a flame that occurs over the disciples' heads, right, in Pentecost. And it's almost this idea that he is like the power of this fire, but he can do it eternally. Like he's outside of the time. The fire is not going to change for him. And I think about how Jesus is depicted with like eyes that are like flaming like fire and things like that. I just feel like there's almost this fire from God that's like an eternal, non-time dependent fire, and then there's like the fire of humanity that's like a real fire where it's gonna start, it's gonna burn, and then it's gonna end,
Unless it gets some fuel from somewhere.
Unless it gets fuel from somewhere, right? So anyway, that was my interesting symbolism idea with fire. It's time.
So the finality, is that the word? The finality of it? It was finite.
I'll go with it. Yeah. I don't know. I think so.
Well, that like the continual burning just like represents like for it to come into effect, like it basically just takes a large amount of energy, right? So like whether that's like striking a match or like some stored energy, releasing stored potential energy and stuff like that. Yeah, you would need like that's what starts the chain reaction, I guess, of fire to like feed itself.
Oh yeah, and also fire breathes oxygen just like humans do. So some sort of weird connection between fire and humans.
Fire is alive, confirmed.
Fire is intelligent.
X-File
Fire
theme.
is human, confirmed.
Oh man! Did we start fire or did fire start us?
That's
I
a
don't know.
$1,000,000 question right there.
Been burning since the world's been
Wouldn't
turning.
you like to know?
Yeah, that's.
Tune in
Anyway,
next week.
there's my thing on fire.
Yeah.
That inspired somebody out there.
My only last question is, how did you come up with that? Or what sparked that as a topic for you?
Yeah, what lit the fire of the fire idea? I mean, it's winter up here in North Idaho. Everybody's lighting fires. I don't know. I just stared at it, I think honestly because we don't really light our fireplace here at our place, but we do light some candles every once in a while. And so it's easy to just stare at the candle and be like, I love that candle. It is so beautiful.
Why do I want to touch it?
It smells good. And yeah, I like candles. Fire's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, when I was a kid, I liked playing with fire too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's your candle. Yeah,
Not
nice.
sponsored.
Yeah, I mean, I would light fires, and I loved big, huge, raging fire. Raging fire. Thor's like smoldering fire. So I liked all that kind of stuff, and I just feel like it's something that's brought about like an amazing change in humanity. So yeah. I wanted to unpack it with you guys. So there it is. Unpacked like a Christmas present.
Yep. And now we know everything there is to know about it.
That's right.
Nobody needs to
Nothing
ever
else.
learn anything more about fire. That was it.
Nah, we've solved it.
Comprehensive. All right, Caleb, you're the man of the hour, or at least a couple minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Man, so what inspires me? I don't know if this necessarily inspires me, but it teaches me a lot. And I'm going to wrap it back into the cold plunge in the sauna. And it kind of ties into nature and fire.
Funny how that always works.
Yeah, one thing I've been learning, or one thing I've been thinking of recently, is surrendering. And that inspires me and it gives me hope. And the reason that came about is because when you go into the cold plunge, you kind of have to accept that it's going to be cold and just surrender to it. If you go into it expecting it to become warm for you, or expecting you can change it or control it, you tend to suffer a lot more than if you just acknowledge that it is what it is. It is cold. And so same thing with nature. Like, I was thinking about all the underbrush and all the animals that you guys were talking about. And these creatures, no matter what nature does, no matter how these trees grow and wrap around each other, they let that happen and they find a way to survive. Whether that's burrowing underground, or whether that's hollowing out a tree, or whether that's, beavers chopping down trees and building dams. Like, they find a way to make it work. They surrender to the system. They recognize that it is what it is. And
instead of complaining to their beaver government.
Exactly. Do something about these darn trees. They find a way to make it work. And I think it's the same thing with fire. It's like, fire is just fire. It's not good. It's not bad. You can have it in both contexts, but it just is what it is. So yeah, I think the idea of just surrendering, in other aspects of life, especially when it comes to relationships with people, you can't really control them. You can't control their responses or their reactions or their actions. All you can do is control yours. And same thing with the cold plunge. All you can do is control how you interact with it. And just accept that it is what it is. So, kind of full circle right there. Like the idea or the thought of just surrender and just accepting things as they are.
There's a lot of forces outside yourself that are
exactly
like, bigger and
not casting too much judgment. I think when we get caught up in like judging situations or making assumptions or having expectations, that tends to breed a lot of disappointment and a lot of suffering.
Or trying to shape the world to your desires instead of seeing it for how it is.
And just having hope. I think that's the big thing too, is like the difference between expectations and hope is, hope is being open to possibilities, and expectations is, I'm only going to be satisfied if this happens, or this is the result that, this is the only result that's going to happen. But yeah, that's kind of
a great definition. I like that a lot. I'm inspired by that.
Yeah.
It's really been inspiring. It's brought a lot of peace too, like just relinquishing, like, okay, I can't control the situation. I'm just going to take the first step and keep going. Use the resources, the information I have, but
I feel like a lot of times people want to like have A through Z lined out before they'll take the first step,
Yeah. I was that person too, so
yeah,
I get it. I still am, But,
where does real estate fall in there? Is that like around God. O or P or?
Man, I don't even know. I'm creating new letters each and every day, man. Trying to keep up.
Throwing some numbers in there.
Yeah. Throwing shapes and hieroglyphics in there, bro. Like
colors, yeah.
Anything I can find.
That's cool, man. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, surrender is a good one because, it's a big world out there, and unless you got a handle on it all, which nobody does, then trying to really wrangle it is a real beast, and usually ends up with a lot of miserableness. So, what have you had to surrender with, Brandon, lately? Let's just dive into your personal life for the amusement of the viewers.
Surrendering. I think surrendering my time has been tough, having to realize that I can't just do whatever I want with my time. It's like, I really have to have a disciplined, structured schedule right now, 'cause I'm working like 45 plus hours a week, getting close to 50. And it's like, oh man, there's, jobs and work and tasks and chores. And, I gotta, like last night, I spent probably about an hour reading books right before going to bed, because it was like, man, I gotta finish some books that I have to read for this Bible study that I'm a part of on Tuesday morning, and I don't have time Monday, so I better do it Sunday. And it was like just adulting very hard with my time management skills right now. And so that's a lot of surrender, because it's like, yeah, but I'd really like to just watch a TV show for like 3 hours and eat ice cream, So that's probably the biggest thing that I've been surrendering in life right now, I would say.
Does your time belong to you?
No, it's split between me and my wife and God and
right answer, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. She's not here right now. I don't know if she'll listen to this later, but I'll share my time with you, honey. You can have some of it. Just a little bit.
Gracious.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Don't get greedy.
You can have the 8 hours while I'm sleeping.
Whoops.
No, I was going to ask something with surrender. What was I going to say with that? There was an interesting idea that you were bringing up.
The French.
The
French.
No, never surrender. The British. I'm sticking with them. Do you feel like surrender is like always a positive thing? Like what's the good way of surrendering stuff? It's like, what if I surrender all of my time to my work and now I'm a workaholic, and it was like too much surrender, the French, maybe they shouldn't have surrendered,
Yeah, we'll never know now.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what do you think is like maybe like the good balance of surrender?
Yeah. So I think surrender is more about control over every situation. I think there's a verse in the Bible my dad always used to quote, which is, without a vision, the people will perish.
My dad too.
Yeah, and so I think it's very important. Must be a dad verse, dude. I think it's very important to have a vision and to take active steps towards that vision or that goal. But also relinquishing the thought or the idea that everything is dependent upon your action or your effort, because you can work so hard at a lot of different things and they will never pan out. Especially being in real estate. I've talked to a lot of other realtors who have busted their tail for different clients, and at the end of the day, the clients chose to go a different route. And so I think surrender is just relinquishing the idea that everything's going to work out the way you want it to. That your will is superior or greater than the will of God or the will of the universe. So yeah, but I that's not a kind of like Paul says, shall we continue to sin so that grace may abound? It's not a call to just not take any action or not do anything or not, be aware of what you need and what you don't need. But it's more of a holistic, realistic approach to just life. It's like, I don't control everything. And so, I feel like everybody could learn from the French, Sometimes you just got to surrender.
All right. 2 questions. One really quick. Have you ever seen Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency?
I haven't.
Okay, because you're freaking me out because you're using like all the lines from that show. But anyway.
I'm going to have to check it out now.
It's pretty wild and out there.
Just say the name of it one more time. It was a funny title. What was that called?
Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
Okay.
I'm gonna look that up right now.
I'm going to have to look that up at some point.
It's got Elijah Wood. It's weird.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You've been warned. But the
We're just
other
gonna have
question,
to watch it and surrender to the movie.
Just surrender to it, man.
it's a lot of because you're saying everything is connected. That was like one of the main themes in it and stuff. But the other question is that because I feel like when you mention vision, there's like a level of because I think people confuse a lot of times their own vision maybe with like the higher, what if you want to call it like capital V vision, so there's like this, I do think there is like a lot of overarching stuff that like you can tap into that will guide you. Like, I mean, I would equate it more to like the spirit of God, and I think everyone just has a different word for it or whatever. But, and so like when you're surrendering to that, like things tend to go like well, or maybe not well in the traditional sense, but they make things like pan out, I guess, or like the in a bigger context makes sense. But then when you try to like go after your own personal vision, that's where you get like the clash of, maybe not, where it feels like not surrendering is causing you strife or causing you like frustration, I guess. And I think like that, those personal goals that don't take into account the bigger picture or where your life might be headed on like a spiritual sense or in a big picture sense, like those smaller immediate wants and desires and goals kind of clash with the bigger thing. And that's where like the hiccups come, and the, feeling like you're almost fighting against the universe or something, in some ways. So,
I've been reading this book it's by Ryan Holiday. It's called Courage is Calling. I don't know if you've heard of it or are familiar.
I've heard of it. I read his other book, The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah. And so Courage is Calling is just a bunch of like 2-3 pages short stories about different people in history, different times people chose to be courageous. And a lot of that involved going against the grain. There was not a lot of surrender in that. You could say they were surrendering to what they believed they should have done in those moments. For example, he used like Martin Luther King as an example. He used a couple different Roman figures as examples. But these guys, they weren't just pursuing their own personal like these wants. They weren't pursuing personal gain. They were always pursuing the greater good, or what they believed to be the greater good.
Like surrendering to something higher.
Yeah, surrendering to something higher. And so, I think sometimes surrendering means fighting with everything you got. And sometimes surrendering means taking your hands off the steering wheel and stepping away. And I think that the distinction lies within the situation, the person, and the tools that we have, at hand. There are some situations where I feel like I could have definitely been more gentle, but I still got through it. And there are situations where I felt like I should have been a little more aggressive, but I was a lot more passive, and I still got through it. But that's kind of what I think about that. Sometimes surrender means just being hands off, or knocking somebody out.
Well, and as you brought up, kind of like life goes on either way. So it's like,
it
if
is
you
what it
didn't
is.
do anything, it's like
Somebody's
you're
going to
still
do
gonna,
it.
or you'll still be here tomorrow, and you can try again, or it's not over. You're not down and out. So even if you make the wrong move at one point or another, which is always a comforting thought for a perfectionist.
Yeah, I know, right?
I think an interesting thought that you were bringing up there, the idea that surrender isn't always a passive thing, Like sometimes surrender is a certain action. Maybe you're surrendering the action that you wanted with doing a different action that you didn't want. Maybe you're like surrendering what kind of action you take. But I think a lot of times when I view surrender, it's like, now I'm going to be completely passive and just let this thing happen, whatever it is. But maybe it's
Jesus,
like,
take the wheel.
Jesus, take the wheel. You know, I don't need to drive.
Yeah.
You know, close my eyes.
Wake me
But
up when we
maybe-
get there.
Yeah, it's like maybe surrendering is being like, right now I have to surrender what's convenient with what's difficult.
Mhm.
And so I'm surrendering my sleep and I'm waking up at 5 a.m. You know, it's like surrender could be like a very difficult action to take, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, it's
That
that
one hits
calling.
too real.
You know, it's that
Too
calling.
real.
I think we all can feel that calling, in a sense of, hey, we should really do this. Like when it's really, really just coming back to it over and over again. And the more you fight it, the more you go against it, you know, the worse off you're going to be. I think the story of Jonah is a good one. You know, he didn't surrender to that calling that God gave him to go preach, and he tried to fight it as much as he could. And once he surrendered, I mean, he still didn't like the result, but once he surrendered, things got a lot more smoother for him. And sometimes it's going to be hard, but like just because you surrender doesn't mean it's going to be easy or it's going to be a walk in the park. But I think once you hear that calling, once you feel that pull, like I need to do this, I need to say something. It might not work out, but once you do it, you have peace. You have a lot more peace than when it's just in the back of your mind nagging at you. Do this, or pay attention to me, or have that conversation you need to have, or you know, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a deep well of interesting stuff right there. Like, because I think you're touching on like some really big stuff right there, and like I think there's a lot to that. But yeah, follow that voice, people. That'd be my advice.
Yeah. Surrender or surrender to our voices. Just listen to us.
Come
Don't
here.
stop. Yes, come.
Week after week after week after week. Well, on that note,
Yeah, good conversation, guys. No, some
Yeah.
good stuff.
it was a real
Man,
pleasure.
thanks for having me. This was
Yeah,
awesome.
man. Yeah. Glad you could join us.
Yeah, you're an interesting guy, Caleb, and definitely
Thanks,
like hearing
Paul.
your perspective on stuff. So
Yeah. If you guys ever want me back, I'd love to come and chat more. I live for these conversations.
Yeah, man.
yeah, we're still trying to figure out the logistics of like, you know, getting people on, and
Totally.
we're like kind of testing the waters right now. But with a great guests like you and positive experiences, why not?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Awesome.
all right,
Alrighty,
Until
thanks
next
folks
week.
for listening. Yeah, until next week. All right, stay inspired. Peace.
peace.
Out of here.